Welcome, everybody. Tonight's Beetcoin Dialogue features Tana Schultz, who happens to be on the board of the Slow Money Institute, but she's here in her capacity as kind of the one of the linchpins of Soil Boulder, the 0% loan group in Boulder. So I'll just introduce her in a second. She'll just say a few words about the Boulder group. And obviously when the Q&A comes up later, if you want to ask more questions about how Soil Boulder works, she'll be here. And then I'll introduce Mark and Kenna Guttridge, who are our featured guests, wonderful regenerative farmers in Longmont, Colorado, and the recipients of 0% loans from the Boulder Group. So Tana, welcome. And I will just say everybody in Boulder is extremely grateful for Tana's commitment of time, money, energy, vision to our common cause. So Tana, say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody. I'm so pleased to be here because we are a model of what Beetcoin is working to replicate. The Soil Boulder Group started actually with Woody when he was living here back in, well, probably its first inklings were probably around 2015, 2016. And then seriously started thinking about having a nonprofit group here that raised charitable donations to make 0% loans to farmers. We officially kicked it off end of 2017, and we've been in business since. The model basically is we have a membership that right now, over the last 4 years, has fluctuated between, I'd say 100 to 120 people. People make a charitable donation in for 1 year, and what that gets them is the ability to vote on doing these loans for farmers. The donations are $25 for farmers for the year, $250 for regular members, and any donation is accepted, and we've received up to even a $50,000 donation. We've raised over 500,000. I don't have the exact number with expenses and everything, but we have made 19 loans in 4 years, totaling around $320,000. And our loan repayments to date are about $134,000. The loans are coming back in, so we're very excited about that. We're pretty much all volunteer led. I'm on the Soil Executive Committee with 4 other people. We do 3 business meetings a year where most of the time we have a farmer or farmers that are presenting loan applications for a vote. Prior to the vote, bringing a vote to membership, we have a loan committee that's also all volunteers that looks at the loan, talks to the farmer, kind of vets it out to see if it's something that we can bring to our members. So that's pretty much the model. And, we're excited that tonight we're highlighting one of our premier farmers in our region, Mark and Kenna of Ollin Farms, and they actually received 2 loans from us, and I'm going to let him tell you more about that. But please feel free to put questions in the chat room. I know I kind of went over a lot quickly, but I'm here, and I can put my email in the chat room if anybody wants to have a conversation about how the soil groups work. Thank you. Great.
Thanks, Tana. And I guess I'll just pass it quickly to Mark and Kenna, but before I do, so I'll just say your email address, tana@slowmoney.org, and mine is woody@slowmoney.org. So that's just there for any and all purposes. And there was one other housekeeping thing that I should have said, which is we are almost live with a page on the Beetcoin website that will have all of the recordings of the Beetcoin dialogues, plus the forward-looking schedule, a couple of months out into the future, so you guys can see what's coming up. It's not quite live yet, but it'll be live within a few days. So just look out for that. And,
hey, Woody,
yes.
I forgot something because I was very business. I forgot one of the most important things. Besides those business meetings, we have a lot of fun, and we even had a lot of fun during COVID because we do social events. We have monthly wine and cheeses. We did them by Zoom during COVID. We're having our first in-person this month. We usually do a harvest dinner or something at the end of the year. So it's a lot of fun to be a member, and that's part of what makes the soil group so special.
All right, so now all you guys need to do is find a Tana in your community and you'll be all set. Okay. Mark and Kenna Guttridge. I think, Mark, I'm just going to let you take it away just in the interest of time.
Sounds good.
We're honored to have you with us. I'm looking forward to hearing your story. So thanks.
Awesome. I'm going to share my screen real quick. I brought some pictures to share our story with you guys. Here we are. Slideshow. All right. I'm assuming you guys can see that. Yeah. So listen to the Beetcoin. I was really honored to have Woody invite Ken and I on. Ken is actually wrapping up teaching a class. She teaches some Spanish classes even at the farm through the winter, and then she's going to be joining us in just a second. I think I hear her coming in, but yeah, it's been an honor to work with Soil and to know Woody Tash for years and years. I remember hearing him at an Acres conference probably closer to a decade ago. That's a big farming organization, and he was giving the keynote and just talking about economics and investment in a way I'd never really heard, and really opened my mind, and have been following him since. And it was awesome to see such a strong community supporting slow money and Beetcoin here in Boulder County, and getting the Soil group up and running. So it was just cool to see the whole process take place. I think it was maybe 10 years ago. I brought a prop as well. We have this. We actually received one of the first Beetcoins. So hopefully in a couple decades, when it goes crazy, I can say we were one of the early adopters, and that thing will be worth a fortune. And but that was one of the fun social events that Tana was talking about, and that's what's been really cool to see around the Soil group that's formed here in Boulder County. Was that it was fun, like farm dinners, fundraisers, getting the community together, and most importantly, farmers were a part of it, and that's crucial. I've been through a lot of organizations and nonprofits and government agencies that tried to help farmers. But unless farmers are actually involved in the process and members, it just doesn't always work out as well. So it's been awesome to see what's happened in Boulder County, and a lot of it is thanks to Woody and Tana, and really thanks to the farmers who were part of it here. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Ollin Farms tonight, kind of how we got started, what we're up to now. We're actually celebrating our 15th anniversary this year. And let me start clicking through these. So the background of the farm, it was my grandma Lee's farm. I grew up here doing 4-H projects, showing sheep and chickens. That's me showing a sheep at the Boulder County Fair. And then I met Kenna about 17 years ago, and actually probably like 19 years ago, and we were living in Lafayette nearby, and my grandma was still living at the farm by herself, and Kenna and I were starting our family, and my grandma started to show signs of Alzheimer's. We knew how much the farm meant to her, so we moved back first just to take care of my grandma and the farm. And just being here over time, it kind of started growing on us. So it was 2005 when we moved back to the farm to take care of Grandma Lee with our girls. And there's our sheep in the front pasture. It's a 6-acre property here just in Longmont, Colorado, which is just about 10 minutes to the east of Boulder, or about 30 minutes from Denver. So right in the Front Range. And after starting a little garden behind the house, and my background's in water resource engineering, environmental engineering, here's Kenna joining us. Let's get over there. Fresh from teaching, she never stops. And so we started a little garden behind the house, and kind of just fell in love with growing food. And we're taking some to some local farmers markets here in Niwot, and realized that it wasn't just about growing food for our family. We really wanted to do it for the whole community. And so that's when we launched Ollin Farms as a business in 2007. So we're Mark and Kenna Guttridge, but we often get called Mr. or Mrs. Ollin. Ollin's actually an Aztec word meaning constant motion or constant change. And that's kind of when we started the farm, we knew it was going to be something in process every day. No 2 days were ever going to be the same. And really wanted to respect like the Aztec culture and some of the native cultures that were here, and we're farming sustainably before white people ever showed up. And that's kind of where we see a lot of the regenerative movement heading, is taking a lot of these native values and cultures and trying to bring this wisdom back into living with the land once again. And it's really defined Ollin Farms over the years as constant motion, constant change, even as a business plan. It's hard to make a living as a family farm. And every year it seems like we're reinventing ourselves and doing new things on the farm. And it's really important. I always say, if you do the same things you did last year in farming, you're not going to be in business another year. Like, it's a constant adaptation. It's a constant change, constant learning, especially as the climate gets crazier and we just see changing markets. So the Ollin Farms team, you can see this is some different shots from around the different years, but we're a family farm. This is probably early on when our two older girls, Ximena and Sophia, and then Amber and Coral were both born after we started the farm, or right when we were starting the farm. And they've been growing up. Amber's in high school now, and Coral's going into high school next year. And all the girls grew up working on the farm. But we also have a great management crew. We're about 15 employees all together, and that includes some high school interns that we hired that worked during the summertime. It's been fun. It's been a journey. This is us at some of our very first farmers markets, and now as the farms progress, it's really kind of developed more into off the farm and CSA distributions and packaged orders distributions. But the focus has always been access to healthy local produce. That's why we started the farm. That's what drives Ollin Farms. And it was really taking care of Grandma Lee here during her last few years of her life, and seeing some other friends going through cancer treatments during that same kind of time when we first moved back to the farm, and really started investigating like food as medicine, and like how come our healthcare system is so messed up. And a lot of it comes back to the soil that we're getting our food from, that we're putting into the community. So we realized that it's just that's got to be the focus of Ollin Farms, just pushing like food as medicine, nutrient dense food into the community. And it's changed over time. The pandemic was a big shock. Like in 2019, we were doing 5 farmers markets a week, had CSAs at the farm, had a farm stand that was open 6 days a week. It was a lot of community interaction. And then when COVID hit, farmers markets were kind of temporarily postponed. And here's all these farmers in Boulder County that had crops in the ground and needed to know where they're going to be selling stuff in April and May. So a lot of us went to beefed up our farm stands, or our farm at Ollin. We did an online model where we put our farm stand online and took online orders and had a drive-through pickup at the farm. That was a big success, and started partnering with a lot of other farms that was carrying their products through that, and kind of making it a one-stop shop for keeping the local food flowing during the pandemic. And as the pandemic is kind of wearing down, we're still seeing a lot of demand for some of those online orders, and just looking at the farm as a food hub instead of us going to these markets, really looking at the farm as a place to bring the community, bring other farmers. And we really need multiple distribution sites of local food around the community. We kind of got caught with our pants down with everybody relying on one market space and everybody going there during COVID. And when that thing disappeared, everybody was scrambling. So I think that's one of the lessons we've learned in Boulder County, is we need a lot more infrastructure to grow food and actually have distribution points around the community, and whether it's online or in person. But the access to healthy produce is really what's driven the farm. And I think the other thing that's really driven us is the direct connection to youth and getting youth on the farm. You want to talk a little bit about the youth programs, Kenna?
Yes. Well, hello, everybody. Hola, ¿cómo están? So what do we do with the kids? You know, they're the future. They need to touch the soil and be in contact with the soil. I always told them, you know, guys, doesn't matter what you're going to be later. You can be a lawyer or an engineer or a teacher, but you need to connect with Mother Nature. It's our home. It's the one that feeds us. And we need to teach the kids to restore the land, because we are going to need it in the future. It's not just having a garden in the back of your house. It's just really connect with Mother Nature, respect Mother Nature, and teach the kids how to restore the land. And through the years, it has been amazing to see how all these kids develop in their own lives. And no sé, it's a story, recently story. These kids, we have a lot of our kids come since they're little, preschoolers, story time, connect them with veggies and Mother Nature. But there are some kids that they were part of the farm as they were youth, they went on, and then they realized the need of their farm in their lives. They were struggling in high school or middle school, and they were like, you know, I need to go back to the soil. And they found the light and the healing that they need in the farm. And there's a lot of stories, but this kid, he just came in December visit. So we were in his home with his parents, and he said, you know, before his mom was about to go and visit him in California, he is in the Marines, and he asked his mom, can you please bring me a bag of the soil from Ollin Farms? So his mom, okay, here's the bag from the farm, and just talking about how he was doing, what they were doing. He just told me that, you know, every time I feel in the need of a therapy or something, and of some of my friends are struggling, I invite them to come to my room and just to put their feet and their hand in my bag of soil. For me, it's just amazing to listen. The healing part of the soil is in need, and we really need to be in connection and to have more people to understand that it's time of restoring. Unfortunately, a lot of land is just being damaged and neglected through the years, but it's that time that we have to pay back what Mother Nature have given us. So that's what we do in the summer classes, and the kids that they're here. We connect them to the land, we connect them to the healthy part of the vegetables, and we have story time projects. We work from preschoolers all the way to high schoolers. We have cooking classes. We have a lot of nice activities. And yeah, that's what we're doing here in the educational programs.
It's beautiful. And that's just awesome to see as a market farmer. A lot of you who know farming know it's a lot of hard labor. It's a lot of long days. And when our crew's busy working and there's Kenna taking one of her summer classes around, it just brings such awesome energy to the farm, and really kind of paints a picture why it's important and what drives us. Because like I said before, the economics is difficult. It's lots of long work. So the kids really drive us.
Yeah, and you know, we have been, some of this has been possible because people who believe in us, they through grants, and unfortunately, with a lot of things that happened during COVID, a lot of that grant money, this is our passion, vegetables and planting the seed in the kids. A lot of that money went in a different direction. And I think that's a situation that us as farmers, we would like to see a change, because I think people need to support the farmers directly. A lot of the money of programs that we started it, and we asked nonprofits to help us because we're a family farm. We cannot get grants because we're not a nonprofit. So a lot of that money went through a lot of organizations like the farmers market, for example. And during COVID, they just really turn our back. They keep our programs and they just apply for the grants, and they just like, okay. So we are like, okay, what are we gonna do now? So we started to look in different places and see what can we do, because these programs, we started it and we were just in the need of help. So fortunately, we have some people that they really believe in us, and we started the story time with preschoolers, and that was beautiful because the kids came, we did some story, but they bring back some vegetables to their home. So it was a very, very nice dynamic, but we're in those situations that suddenly you need to think super fast how you're gonna play the game this time, because things just change so fast and unexpectedly.
That's true. And so this bottom picture is actually one of our high school internship program that we launched a few years ago. And that's one of the hardest parts with that we see in Boulder County, especially. One of the biggest limitations is labor. Labor costs are so high because cost of living is so high here that you can't pay someone 15, 17, 16 bucks an hour and they can't rent a one-room apartment anywhere. So there's a huge labor crunch. And one of the beauties of having all these kids grow up at the farm, like when they get to high school, some of them are looking to volunteer, looking for summer jobs, and we have this awesome pool that has really helped carry the farm through some of the biggest labor crunches we've seen. So one of the other big pieces we're looking at is how to do more conservation practices on the farm. That original picture I showed you guys was actually like this 6 acres down here. This is another 14 acres of Boulder County open space that we lease. And these purple fields are all of our vegetable fields where we're growing all our summer crops. And in 2018, this field got just nailed with hail like 2 or 3 times. It was a pretty devastating year. And that was our 10th year in business, and that was the first 10 years of the farm. I was working as an engineer full time on the side of getting the farm up and going. Kenna still was working as teaching; she still is a teacher. I still do engineering in the wintertime. But 2018 was the first year that we were actually able to get my whole summers off just to be a farmer. And like 2 days after I'd left my engineering job, like hailstorm, boom, in June. 3 months later, another one in August, like right as things were bouncing back. And so we really looked and said, we have to, if we're going to survive a long time as a farm in these times of change, climate craziness and just extreme events, either extreme drought, extreme rain, like we have to storm proof the farm. And that's where we really started looking at regenerative practices that we could implement around the farm. And this is a conservation plan with NRCS, like an EQIP plan, where they can bring some cost shares if you're doing soil building techniques. So this is one that we just completed last year. It was a 3-year plan to do additional cover cropping, put in some pollinator forage around the fields. And the big thing we're doing is alley cropping, where we're putting in windbreaks of shrubs or a whole line of trees here to act as windbreaks within the field. Because when those hailstorms came, they were small hail, but like 80-mile-per-hour winds that just brought everything in sideways. That if we would have had some protection in the field, we could have survived this. That's what we're really looking to do, is to find ways to implement regenerative techniques, whether it's these red places where we did rotational grazing of our sheep. We started on-farm composting, just getting leaf waste or wood waste from the community, mixing it with our chicken scraps and making compost there. And it's just a great way. And this is on public land. Isn't even our land, but we're making we're renting it. We're making a conservation plan. We're really trying to make a long-term goal to make this a healthier piece. So this is one example of the conservation plan. This is the alley cropping I was talking about, just so people can get a visual. And to me, this is really the future that we need to start heading in. We need more perennial crops. Every time we go out and turn the soil, all the carbon gets disrupted. And so right now agriculture is adding to all the CO2 in the atmosphere, when through photosynthesis we could be sequestering it back into the soil. So the $1 million question that we got to figure out is, how do we start growing new topsoil? At the rate that we're losing topsoil in America right now, in 40 years there's not going to be topsoil left. We have 40 harvests left unless we can understand how to grow new topsoil. So that's been really the focus of our work here, and a lot of my scientific background is like, how can we grow this? So part of that conservation plan was putting in 9,000 linear feet of these windbreaks, where eventually these things could produce some plums, or we're doing a lot of shrubs in the field, like choke cherries or gooseberries or currants, or things that we could harvest and have a market for here in Boulder. Rotational grazing of animals is a really important way. Probably people, that's one that you kind of see the most on Netflix movies, is like, that's a great way to regenerate land, is moving animals around. Composting is one that's just huge. Like, we got to get composting back on the farm. The fertilizer costs are shooting up for farms that are using fertilizers, and compost costs are too. And there's enough waste within the community on the farm that you can cycle it and keep it on the farm. And then pollinators, a lot of why we're putting these trees and all these pollinator crops in is like, those are keynote. The birds and the pollinators, we've seen like where we've been doing these regenerative techniques, like those things are just showing up in forest. And that's really what we're gauging our success at. Like, how are these ecosystems looking at as far as diversity? And so in 2020, right when the pandemic was just getting started, we signed a lease on additional 135 acres. So the old plan that we were looking at up here, and then this is 135 acres. This is open space land as well, so publicly owned land that they lease to farmers. But one of the problems in Boulder County is they lease a lot of farms that look like this. And this is how we inherited this property. Was just, you can see from this picture, it's been heavily tilled for years besides these two fields. And it was just a weedy mess the year before that nobody was on it. The county kind of biffed it up, and it just went to weeds, and it was just really, really tough spot. And here it is in our neighborhood. We had some neighbors that said, we'd love to see something awesome here. Can we invest a little bit directly in helping this move forward? So again, it was that kind of public investment that made this expansion possible, because it was in a mess. And so this is what we're doing over there. This is our transition. The back 80 acres, we're taking it out of tillage systems, putting it into perennial prairie grasses that are drought tolerant, that don't need to be irrigated. And we have a friend, Andy, right here, that has his cows that he'll end up rotational grazing and just managing those native prairies with cows. That's how we got topsoil here, was native prairies with buffaloes going through once or twice a year, is how we got that little bit of soil that we do have out here in the Prairie West. And that's what we're going to try to mimic. And all these techniques are mimicking nature. Just as I was talking before, just like the Native Americans did. Like they knew how nature worked, how nutrients flowed. They weren't extracting things all the time like modern agriculture is. So here's our first 80 plum trees that got planted out there this year. The field 1 and field 5 are going to be larger alley cropping. Where in our vegetable fields, we're doing kind of 4 feet shrubs, like every 40 feet apart. They say with wind protection, every 1 foot you go up, you get 10 foot of protection. So we space our 4 shrubs every 40 feet through the field and still have like 10 rows of tomatoes in between them. On these fields, since the plum trees can get to about 10 feet tall, we'll space them every 100 feet. So it'll just be like 6 or 7 rows of plums going through this entire field, going lengthwise, and we'll still be able to grow hay in between or grow vegetables. This is all on kind of old drip or flood irrigation, a little bit of gated pipes, a little bit of older technology than the home farm, which is all drip irrigation. But it's really been made possible, this whole project. We call it Project 95. We're along the 95th Street corridor here, but also they say the perfect soil is 25% air, 25% water, 45% minerals, and 5% organic matter. And everybody in regenerative agriculture, all they're talking about is organic matter, that carbon, that 5%. And what we really realize is you got to manage a whole other ecosystem. You got to manage the air and water ratios, how you manage the soil. You got to manage the minerals. And that's how you'll get to that 5% organic matter in the soil is managing the other 95%. So that's kind of another reason we call it Project 95. And we've been partnering with other young farmers. We've been able to get some grants through the county, working with NRCS to get some cost shares. But again, those are cost shares that kind of keep it running. And I'd say that probably, and so this is all on the side of the vegetable business, like healing these lands and planting these trees has no return for the first 3 or 4 years, or if not more, until we're ready to put cows out there, until we're ready to get fruit from those trees. So how do you fund those projects? And that's why these projects aren't taking place on agriculture at large scale. Is like all the risk is on the farmer, and the farmers are so busy just trying to make a living. There's no time to invest in something like this that's 3 years down the road. And so we've really trying to demonstrate on this property, how can we make this happen? Just like Woody is demonstrating, how can we get people to invest locally? This is another demonstration that and part of its grants, probably 30% come from some county grants, 30% come from NRCS funding, but the other 40% come from just private donors and us ourselves funding that from our vegetable business, which we really can't afford to do, but we're putting everything we can into it because we believe in this. They think this is the future. And this has a list of some of the different things that we're doing. I'm happy to answer more questions on this or financing or pieces of that. But the first time we did get the soil loan was when we were working with, that's one of the other challenges, both with the grants and with the NRCS cost shares, is a lot of those programs, you have to submit receipts to get paid back. And so here's a farm with not a lot of capital. How do we invest in that? And that's where soil really saved our butt during that first conservation plan. We're coming out of that hailstorm with barely squeaking into the next year. And we had this great vision for the land, but not the resources to put it in. So we went to soil and said, hey, we have these cost shares. They're going to be coming in a year or two. Once we finish this stuff, can you guys put the money up front so we can go buy all the trees and get the infrastructure we need to get this done? And sure enough, it worked out, and we were able to get that final part of that conservation plan paid off to us this year. We were able to pay off soil. So it's a great example of how we can think about these projects. Yes, like starting farm infrastructure, soil wasn't around when we first started our farm 15 years ago, but we needed loans then too. We worked with Farm Service Agency, USDA, and that's probably what most farmers are going through FSA and USDA for low interest loans, not zero interest loans. But it's there is access to kind of beginning capital, but a lot of what soil really offers is these kind of invest in a project and bring people from the community with it that believe in it and can support it. It's one thing to donate to a project, another thing to come get your hands dirty and be a part of it. And that's what I really liked about the soil group here is, there's still people that just want to donate and say they did something good and not follow up or be the real heart part of it. But there's definitely people in that group that I've seen put their blood, sweat, and tears in the soil in Boulder County. And that to me is a sign of that. And you need both. You need people that are just willing to write the check and move on, and you need people that are willing to follow up with the farmers and checking in on them to make sure that they need help, any help that they're getting. And a lot of it honestly is grants. A lot of this cutting edge research, regenerative work, it just takes grants. Some of that stuff can't be done with loans, and that's why we do have a donation site. I'll put that link to on the chat. that kind of talks on there, talks more about the specific research we're doing, but all that goes to, right now we're funding to plant that 80 acres of native prairie grasses this year and put in more plum trees. And it just takes, and that's one of the tough things with the, like you get a 1-year grant from the county, but this is a 10-year project and every year we have expenses and things. And so the first year we're well funded, and then the county grant ran out, and this year we had to put a bunch from the vegetable farm. Now we're applying for new grants, and it'd just be, the only thing that's been solid throughout is a few key donors that have like always been there to help us keep key programs running, and those were individuals. So I think that's where I agree with Woody. That's probably the most important thing that we can be doing, is like in having individuals find local farmers in their community, invest directly in them, whether through donations or whether through zero interest loans. Either way.
Hey, Mark, this is Woody. Put your face back on the screen now that you're
All right, me unshare.
Yep. I wasn't trying to stop you. I just figured you were through the PowerPoint. I just wanted to remind you that people weren't seeing you.
Yep, we're good. I think that's it. I think we should open it up to some questions, and we covered a lot real quick. We're happy to go much deeper into any piece of it that people are interested in. I know some broad topics.
I'll just give it people a second in case anybody wants to jump in. I have a few things. Wow, what a passive group.
Let me answer the first one from the chat while we're waiting here. Andy's house, did they add local meat to our CSA with time? Yeah, like right now, Andy has his own CSA. We're gonna have a CSA pickup probably at the farm. We're happy to incubate his business as it grows, but the goal, that's one of our focus, like of all the produce that went through our farm stand and our different CSAs and distributions, like 70%, 75% came from our core farm and 25% came from other local farms in Colorado, young farmers that we want to support, get their word out there. And that's kind of the future to me, is this farmer to consumer. Like there's just not enough money in farming anywhere in the food chain there's too many people taking cuts that it has to be farmer to consumer. Like we got to bypass the fees in the grocery stores and other things. Like it's great. Restaurants are great because the chefs can highlight the food and they're important part of that ecosystem, but it's that direct farmer to farmer connection is great. And I think one place where something like soil and these groups really do get the farmers together and talking and leads to collaboration.
Mark,
what did you see? Or you see there's some hands up?
Thank you for noting that, Tana. So I'm just going to do in the order that I see them. Thanks, Tana. So Vaughn, is it Ochoa? Am I saying your name right? Okay, unmute yourself.
Yep, Vaughn Ochoa. How's my audio?
We
can hear you. Yep.
Okay, great. 2 questions. One was, I wanted to know how's your experience been with water storage or getting permissions to get cisterns to support your farm? And then the other one was, I was wondering if you have been in contact with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and the Circular Economy Show at all, because they do highlights of projects like yours and family farms like yours that are anchored in regenerative design.
That's awesome. I haven't heard of those two, that organization. I can wrote them down.
No, what's the name of the organizations?
It's the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. They're very international, which I love. And then the Circular Economy Show is the show that I follow. There's always they have from North America to Europe to South America. Their main spots are in London and New York and Sao Paulo, Brazil, highlighting projects all around.
That's awesome. We'll look them up. And for the water question, that's a great question for here in Colorado. We're in the arid West. Water is everything. And let's say we have all this carbon sequestration research. If you don't have that drop of water, there's no carbon getting sequestered. The seeds are worthless. The compost is worthless. It's all depends on water driving that system. And as more and more people move out here, there's more demands for water. And there's a lot of complicated water law. Like luckily, some of the open space properties do come with water rights. There's on our vegetable, we have a pond where we can put water in there and go out to the fields through our drip system. But we're actually on our home farm, we use municipal water because we're using drip irrigation and only just dripping right at the plant root. Where we actually buy clean water that's pressurized, that shows up like tap water, and have kind of like a commercial rate on that, so it doesn't escalate. So just like any other business that use water. And a lot of people thought we were crazy when we started doing that, but just using these water saving techniques like drip irrigation and really relying on water as through the irrigation system as a last resort, like that's been we've been able, it's not a major cost for us for the water.
Thanks for the question. Hey, Vaughn, where are you from? I forgot to tell people to say where you're from.
Oh, I am from Whatcom County, Washington State, the land of Lummi Nation and Nooksack tribe.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Chris Holstrom. Hi,
Hey,
Chris.
Woody.
Say where you're from, and then fire away.
I'm County Commissioner from San Miguel County, Colorado. I live between Placerville and Ridgeway, Colorado. I have two questions now, because one question was, you must not have any issues with any of the treated water you have. I know in some rural areas we have a lot of issues with chlorine and chloramines. And then the second was, since I am an elected official, are there any particular policies that you have found to be a barrier? I know that there are issues with some of what Boulder County has done through their open space program. I'm friends with Marion. She's telling me Boulder County really.
I'm
gonna
take out the list.
Okay, great. Maybe just one or two in particular. We have a payment for ecosystem services program that we're working on to pay farmers and ranchers to 1.5 times the equip rate for increasing practices, but we're still, as I think somebody else put in the chat, we're still looking for more producers. So maybe one or two policies that you were particularly sticking point, and then the question about the water. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for your service and for tuning in and being interested in agriculture as a commissioner. That's awesome. And the valley you're in is a beautiful, beautiful agricultural valley. We sell potatoes from down there. I think the biggest thing that we've really seen the pattern is finding ways to make sure the funding is getting directly to the farmers. There's been various fundings. There's been like a carbon sequestration study here that like ended up kind of going to CSU, and they did a very academic study on it, but nothing really ever trickled. There was a good chunk of change, but nothing never really trickled down to change on the ground that I saw, or money actually getting to farmers. Likewise, with hiring nonprofits to lead some of these conservation things, we've seen some barriers with that, where a lot of the nonprofits are taking a lot of that could be going directly to farmers. So I think that the biggest challenge is, how do we work with farmers directly? How can we make sure organizations have the voice of the farmers, are working directly with them? I think that the equip, like the 1.5 times equip thing, is perfect. Like following these kind of conservation plans and using that as a tool to implement these things, and thankfully it kind of provides a way to track it, and we can even track success rates. If we're tracking soil carbon over time, the database is there to start filling this, to know what actually works for sequestering carbon. Finding how to get those farmers involved, I think, is, like you say, that's key. And then looking at it through a public health point of view too, it can help the farmers a lot. There's a sugar tax in Boulder County that went to funding a lot of our food access programs, and those, if they can find ways to like get people on food access directly connected to someone with the CSA, even better than going through nonprofits again. And it's just great for the farm. It's great for the community, and it's a great way to address a lot of issues, from farmer sustainability to health in the community. That's just a win-win for everybody. So looking at soil health and also community health, and finding how to fund things through community health, because it's really through our vegetable sales that we're able to do the soil health work, like I mentioned. And so making sure that farmers are having those access to those grants too is huge.
Thanks, Chris. Earl Stalin, you have a question?
Yes, hi. Thanks very much for your presentation. I'm in Englewood, and I'm part of an effort to get publicly owned banks in Colorado. And we have some very good, enthusiastic people in the Longmont area. And I'll mention, I very much enjoyed an all organic dinner at your farm at a fundraiser for 350 Colorado a couple of years ago.
Nice.
The public banks could do so much more, because they use public money, put it in a people's bank, say the city of Longmont or state of Colorado, and then invested in local businesses instead of fossil fuels and big ag farming and things that are not sustainable. And the income comes back to the taxpayers and people who own the bank and can invest in organic farming and things like that. I wonder, are you familiar with that idea? And how can we get people who support organic farming and gardening, growing their own food behind this idea? What do you think?
Yeah, we don't know that much about him. I've heard a little, and I think, I mean, in general, like that's another great way to bring money back local, and more importantly, decision making about money back local. Yeah, I think there definitely be more interest for that. I think there's a big education piece that has to get out there and get people excited about it. So the communication, I think, is a big piece. But that's one of the things we do. We have like festivals at our farm where a lot of our community partners that we work with, from pollinator groups to anti-fracking groups to restoration groups to volunteer groups, that have a little booth at our festivals where they can like do that, exactly that, get their word out, talk about it. And I think it's that face-to-face communication that's really key to move something like that forward.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark, did you see the question? There's a question there about volunteer opportunities to help out on the farm. Did you see that question?
Yep. Yeah, there definitely is, especially mostly around like the Project 95 work. A lot of those like tree planting days. Another thing that we're doing is, as we're planting those trees, we're going through and putting our homemade compost down or mulching them. And we're growing like mushroom mycelium and putting that with wood chips and putting that out in the fields. We're really working with a lot of in-field composting, which is labor intensive, a lot of like putting that stuff out in the field. And so we work locally with a group called Wildlands Restoration Volunteers. They organize probably anywhere from 5 to 15 work days out here each year to do those specific planting projects. And so that's a great wrv.org, I think, is their website. And they'll have dates posted a long time. People that want to get more, that want to come and volunteer more, like once a week or once every couple of weeks, there's opportunities for people to get involved that way too. Just email the farm, we'll put you on the list, and as things get revved up in the spring, we'll be communicating more volunteer opportunities.
So there was a question from Dita Hutchinson on there about talking about grants, asking us to maybe talk a little bit more about the possibility of soil groups giving grants instead of 0% loans. And that reminds me that Kenna made the comment when she was talking earlier about, well, we're not a nonprofit, so it's really hard for us to get grants. And so obviously the soil model, the idea of using donated capital from local individuals and then giving it as 0% loans is a hybrid model. I mean, obviously, right? It's using grants and 0% loans. The spirit behind that is to have the money recirculate, right? So that's really, really a key part. And we just touched a little bit on water and different and circular, this and that, I mean, so the idea of recirculation is really, to my thinking, a very, very key part of the sort of paradigm that we are all struggling to usher in. We're going from centuries of linear thinking. Now we're trying to go circular and get things recirculating. So obviously, if there are a lot of grants in there, the recirculation part is lost. But I'm curious to hear from Mark and Kenna's standpoint. I mean, I remember to one of the loans. So I was still in Boulder when COVID hit, and we gave you, I think, your second 0% loan. I think it was for $11,000. I'm trying to be as specific as I can, just put some dollars on stuff.
Yeah.
Because you needed a used van, because suddenly you realized you were going to have to be doing a lot more delivery and running around rather than just going to the farmer's market or just having people come to the farm stand and whatnot. So I don't know. I think I'm trying to prompt maybe Mark and Kenna to chime in a little bit on just sort of how they feel about the grants and the 0% loans. Anything that you want to add on to what I just said. Oops, Mark, are you frozen? I think you might be frozen. There you go.
I think the connect. Let's see.
There you go. I can hear you now.
Okay, our connection was off for just a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it has to be a hybrid. It has to be a hybrid model. It can be both. Like when we're going and just asking for a van, I think having that recirculating loan, that's a pool of money that I've seen other great projects from building walk-in coolers. Like if it's really operational for the farm to grow and sell more vegetables and it can be paid off, and for sure those things need loans and they need recirculating loans to go. If it's something more like a single time education program or like an outreach program, like those, or some of this carbon research, those things really fit more for grants in a lot of ways. And so for instance, there's like a pollinator group that we work with that if somebody does want a tax write-off, and they want to donate to the farm, we usually send them to that pollinator group and they're a nonprofit and they'll channel it right into seeds that they buy, and then we plant the seeds out on the property. So it's kind of a hybrid. Like if you find, I think there is a place for soil even as their nonprofit arm to be able to do that similar thing like that pollinator group is doing. If there's certain cases that are something that really deserves more of a grant than a loan, but really I think it's important to look at loans like it's part of that business planning for farmers. Like when is it time to invest in a new piece of infrastructure? How long is it going to take me to pay it off? I think that's a healthy thing to have that loan program going too. But keep the flexibility and maybe make grants available as just a pass through right to the farm.
Tana, is there anything you would want to say just about, as someone who's been integral to, you've hosted a lot of the actual soil meetings at your home. A typical soil business meeting would have about 40 or so people, 45, sometimes bigger, but and do you just want to try to share with people who have never been to one of those what it feels like to be in the room listening to farmers make a pitch? Not a pitch. I can't believe I used that word. Make a presentation. You know, you can't get the venture capital out of the kid's head, you know, what can I say? Not a pitch. There's a presentation to a bunch of neighbors and community members about what they're doing. Do you just want to share a little bit what that's like with folks who haven't had the pleasure of doing that?
Yeah, I mean, and I'd love Mark and Kenna to say what it was like to be the farmer, but yeah, in the room as a person that's donated and you're sitting in a room with farmers that have, you know, their membership is 25 and some other individuals who have given, you know, 5 figures and, you know, and everybody's vote is the same. It's great. It's like, oh, this is a democracy, you know, slow style, I guess. But there's just something, it's so beautiful to hear, like, I'm going to use the weird word, I'm felling over Mark and Kenna and, you know, the fact that we were able to be a part of being there for them when they really needed us. And there's just nothing like it. I mean, new members come in and they attend those first meetings and vote on loans. It's just a beautiful thing. It makes you feel like I'm making a direct difference. I'm not just writing that check. I'm involved. I see what's going on. And, you know, not everyone comes to meetings. You know, I think Woody we've had a few meetings with that many people, but, you know, sometimes we may only have our quorum there. There may only be, you know, 25 people, 30 people there. And that's fine. And the people that don't come, they know that they've empowered the other people to make those decisions for them. It's really fun. It's fun. It's beautiful. Mark, what do you say? What was it like?
He hated it. He hated it.
It was fun. As long as you have food and remember to do them like most of the big meetings in the wintertime when farmers actually have time. That's one thing to consider if you want to get farmers to show up. Like a night like this, February works great. January works great. By the end of March, if you're talking to a veggie farmer, you're probably not going to get much of a response. It's important to know the seasonality of the flow of the farm as well.
Yeah, we do try to hold our business meeting. We have one usually in January, April, and then in the fall. So we try to make it a little easier for the farmers to be able to be there. And then we fill in, but for instance, you know, we reach out to the farmers and find out if there's things they need. And again, during COVID, we reached out to lots of local farmers, not just people that were loan recipients, to find out if they had special needs. And we held special meetings via Zoom during COVID. So yeah, it's great. And, you know, a few people have been asking about, you know, talking about what is it like to set up a soil group. I'm happy to have that conversation with anyone. I've been around long enough where I can offer the overview and specifics if you really want to get deep into it. It takes people that really, you know, care and don't mind some community organizing and like to have parties. What can I say?
All right, I see we have another hand up. Liz Morgan, unmute yourself.
Thanks, Woody. I'm Liz Morgan. I'm in Buena Vista, Colorado, although I used to live in Boulder, and I remember when Ollin Farms started. Yeah, I was interested when you guys were talking about diversifying your distribution strategies during COVID and having online ordering and having people come to your farm and pick up, in addition to like selling to restaurants and going to the farmers markets. I'm curious what you think would be like ideal distribution strategy for you. Like, is it worth it to go to the farmers markets every week? Is it too much stress? Do you want people coming by your farm? Like, what would your ideal lowest stress, most productive strategy be?
I think that would definitely depend on the age of the farm too. I think if you're in like your first 3 years of your farm, like the farmers market is the place to go. You're going to meet new people. You're going to meet new farmers. I think what we've seen in Boulder County is once you kind of pass that 5-year mark, a lot of farms kind of look at more on-farm distribution. They have their loyal CSA customers that come right to the farm, and CSA at the end of the day is the most reliable. Like the people invest at the beginning of the year, they come out and get a share all season long, rain, snow, wind, or shine. They're there picking up their food. It's the most, you know exactly what to harvest. It's very efficient. I think for a farm like us, what we're really looking at right now is kind of making the farm like a local food hub where we're not going to farmers markets anymore.
Yeah.
And we're partnering with other farms and giving some other farmers a chance to become maybe just a wholesale farmers. Like there's a flower farm, Arrowhead Dahlias, that's like amazing flower growers that couldn't go back to the market because the county said it was non-essential during COVID. Flowers were, so we brought them. They were one of the first people we brought on to our virtual farm stand here. And over the time, like they have a son that's growing, like, you know, I think we really just want to do wholesale. And this year they're just going to be selling their flowers to us, and we'll handle all their distribution because we're already doing our distribution. So I think that's the most efficient model, is the group of farms that have a centralized distribution. So there's 3 or 4 meat farmers that we work with. There's 3 or 4 other produce farmers. Jones Farm in San Luis Valley, we get their potatoes up here, and that's our main potato supply. And it's just being able to connect right with those farms and have it being farmer to consumer, where we get paid a little bit for that distribution piece, and it adds the quality that the farmers see. And so and it's different for us because we love, as you saw from this presentation, we love having people come to the farm. So we like that aspect of it, and we want to have a busy farm stand and have people come engage with the farm and see the fields and go to farm dinners and get their hands dirty, to get the kids into a summer class and they really experience the farm. I think that's what we're really looking for. But it's hard, even as really that collaboration is hard. Like the CSA, if you're trying to grow every single thing for your CSA, it really spreads you thin as a farmer, having to grow 140 different varieties of 30 different veggies. And we still do it, but as time goes on, we focus on like the 75% that we do awesome and outsource the 25% that's not economical for us to grow.
Yeah, really interesting. Thanks so much.
Yep.
Thanks for that, Liz. So
Woody, there's Solomon has his hand up.
oh, good. I don't see him on my screen. Solomon, where are you?
He's there.
I'm here. Hi. Hi.
Yeah.
Yes. How's it going? Thanks
Good.
for having me. Great stuff. So just on the fundraising or financing aspect, I'm here in Chicago, and have worked with a few organizations, and one of them is the Frontera Farmer Foundation. They found a little bit of a loophole, or a way to give grants to the farmers that they source from. So it's Rick Bayless. He has sources a lot of local food. So just as an interesting maybe avenue to pursue in the Boulder County area, there may be certain chefs or other restaurants that may be interested in sort of forming a similar nonprofit model where they're able to raise money, and then at the restaurants they do special dinners and raise those sort of hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and grant that to the local farms for whatever it is, hoop houses or egg washing or whatever the equipment is. It's sort of they sort of just vet and choose all the local farms. So it's a little bit of another hybrid model that could be interesting to explore. Maybe difficult to get approved by the IRS because they're sort of granting money to their own suppliers, but it was definitely something that I've seen work in an organization that I've supported here in Chicago. And then on the distribution end, it's really this strikes me as like a big problem where there's so many distributors in 4 or 5 different touch points for any produce on average in the current food system, and there's a lot of work that goes into a farmer's market. And so this trend of trying to simplify, make the supply chain more local, regional, more resilient is really something that I see as a valuable trend, and something that we're trying to support in the Chicago area through storefront that we have at Village Farm Stand. Sort of sprung up out of COVID. These farms had no restaurants to go to anymore, so we started a Shopify store and sort of distributed that direct to consumer, and it aggregates and worked with the farmer that sort of aggregates. It sounds like similar to what you're doing there, where you're aggregating some food from various other farms and then distributing it out, and sort of trying to take a lot of that sort of fat out of the system, where the middlemen are sort of taking more out of away from the farmer, right? So I really would love to hear more of your thoughts on that. Like that's a really, I think that's a really important way like a middle ground to find there, where we can simplify the supply chain as much as possible, but also provide the sort of convenience and variety of offerings for the consumers that want to pay a premium and want to connect to the farms in the local region. So that's just a great area to kind of explore as we move forward.
Yeah, thank you so much for your interest in your work in Chicago. That sounds great. We were lucky to have a pretty awesome chef community in Boulder County that supports farms, and some of those were struggling big time during the pandemic. And we partnered with a good friend, Paul Riley, at a Coperta restaurant down in it was Beast and Bottle at the time of the pandemic, and Coperta restaurant now. We had our online sales. One of our drop-off points was at the restaurant in Denver, and that we're going into our 3rd year partnering with them and doing similar thing. Like it's so important to realize the importance of the chefs in this whole local food economy. And it's it's farmer to consumer, but we need a whole cheerleading team on the outside if this is going to work. And probably the biggest, most important part of that cheerleading team is local chefs. Like they're the ones that really have the voice, really have the creativity, and they're just savvy. Like there's some of the chefs I know are they're like farmers. They have to freaking adjust every day like this. Their brains are programmed for creative thinking and collaboration, and it's really been awesome to work with some of our partner chefs. And we do like a series of 6 or 7 farm dinners at the farm every year, and we're not cooking for those. It's the chefs that support us and support the farm. They're the ones that have their event at the farm, and it's a win-win for both. Like they make money for catering and chefing, and we make money for hosting, and it's another revenue stream that has to be part of that holistic, diversified approach to making a farm economically feasible and making a community holistically knowledgeable about the food and the importance of eating local and seasonal, and really highlighting those flavors. That was our biggest marketing when we first started the farm, was those farm dinners, to get people actually eating our produce at the farm. And sure enough, you'd see them at the farmers market, you'd see them at the farm stand, they'd become CSA members. Like it's a great way to keep that ball rolling forward. So thank you for your work, Solomon. That's awesome.
I see Andrew Nowak's hand is up before I call on him. His comment about the chefs making grants directly to the farms, and he mentioned the IRS and raised some questions about businesses making grants to suppliers and whatnot. I mean, it's interesting to me. Correct me if I'm wrong, those of us who are on the call from Boulder, me being former Boulder, but we really haven't had a lot of direct engagement in soil from the restaurants in town, right? Because the restaurants are all doing direct things. They're doing individual things. But it would seem to me, just following up on Solomon's comment, that over time, groups like soil should be very useful to the restaurant community as a collective way for them to chip in and know basically that their money is going to go out in a series of loans, just like what Solomon was talking about, small infrastructure loans that will help their suppliers. So I'm just flagging that for us, but let me call on Andrew because we're at the hour mark and we're trying to kind of stick to an hour-ish. Andrew, your question, good to see you.
Yes, hi everybody. Mark and Kenna, thank you very much for your presentation. You are certainly one of the rock stars here in Boulder County, and we appreciate you. I am a fellow farmer. I did get a soil loan a couple years ago for some infrastructure here on the farm. I'm also a member of Slow Food Boulder County, and a couple of weeks ago we met with, we had a happy hour. We met with 12 young farmers throughout Boulder County. And the goal was to hear from them what were some of their challenges and how can Slow Food Boulder County bring together some resources to help them overcome some of these challenges. And of course, one of the challenges for a young farmer is capital. And I brought up the idea of the soil loans, and most of the young farmers were not aware of the soil program. And so, I felt I was serving a mission there to inform them. But many of them were very wary of taking on loans at such a young stage of their programs. And when we were discussing earlier some of these hybrid models that perhaps soil could adopt, I'm wondering if there's something we could adopt for the younger farmers just to give them a little bit of an edge, whether it's a grant or a half grant or something that would help them build their farms so that they'll be in a better position to accept a full-fledged loan in the future.
I have a simple answer, which is fertile topic to be explored. I would just go back as a macro or whatever to my other comment about getting a flow of capital recirculating in the community. I think is for me, that's like the guiding star. So then within that, it'd be like saying on a farm, you have a guiding principle, and then you have a bunch of different things you do under there and you react to make it work. So if there is, this is just one person, if there is a way to have some allocation for some small grants that can be used on occasion to whatever. I mean, some of our loans, I remember, some of them were just a few $1,000s and they were very young enterprises or farms. So we've come close to grants, but they aren't grants, to your point, Andrew. So that's a point well taken. I would say that's something the membership should discuss over time.
Yeah, and
but it's important just to emphasize nationwide, we have 5 soil groups right now. This would be a good time to just remind everybody that they have about $1.5 million in the 5 groups, the 4 of them in Colorado, 1's in Virginia. There is a new one starting in Israel. I'm going to be on a Zoom call with them next month. And the long-term objective is to create permanent, slowly growing pools of capital that over time can do more and more in their community. And that recirculation is absolutely critical to that. And as successful as Soil Boulder is, it's still not, everybody doesn't renew their membership every year. So kind of maintaining membership, maintaining the flow of capital into the top of the funnel so capital can go out, it's an art form. So to be continued on that front. Tana, I'm sorry, did I step on a comment you wanted to make?
no, I was just going to say, because we had another member on that actually brought up the idea of grants, and we've talked about it before. We've to what Woody said, we felt it's really important that right now, part of what we say to our members and bringing people in is that money is going to be recirculated. But I think there's other ways we can explore this with the group. The first thing I thought was, well, why couldn't we have people that want to come into soil or people that are already there and say, I'm willing to be a higher donor, and we can set aside certain amounts of money that possibly could be for grants. So it'd be kind of like an arm within soil. It's just something to explore. let's see, well, I was gonna say something else, but I can't remember. That's
All
all.
right, I see Marion
Oh,
Murphy.
I know.
Oh,
Oh,
go ahead, Tana.
I just don't want to forget, I think PJ Bergen is on the call. And she heads up the Soil Sangre de Cristo soil group. I don't know if she's still on or not, but we should try to acknowledge her if she's still on after we get Marion's question.
I guess she might not still be
She
on.
might be off. She was on earlier.
Okay, Marion,
Yeah,
we're
my question is
we're over time, so let's be cognizant of that.
It's
Go ahead.
very short. It's a short question. Where could we find the recordings of these sessions?
Okay, you
'Cause I'd
came
like
on,
to-
you came on late, so I'll just remind everybody, we are
Yes.
about to go live, meaning within a few days. And
Uh-huh.
we'll send something out when we're live. We'll let you know. We'll have
Okay.
a page on the Beetcoin website. That's a perfect way to wrap up the official part of the proceedings. We'll have a page on the Beetcoin website where all of the recordings of these are archived and where the upcoming programs, you'll be able to see looking out a couple of months who's going to be on the upcoming programs. So just stay tuned for that. I think I should just, in the interest of time, thank everybody for coming. I will stay on for a few minutes, as I always do, just to gab and answer any lingering questions or just to gab a little bit. And coming back to where we started, there's an action attached to this, and the action is donating to Beetcoin. And no amount is too small. I know I said that at the beginning. You know, we want to get this flow of capital to happen, and it will be a beautiful thing as it grows. Just think of a very broad top of the funnel with lots of small donations coming in, and it flows down into these local soil groups where all the lending decisions are made at the local group. The capital stays local and recirculates permanently. So just put that idea in your head. Share the idea. I've been very heartened by the participation in these first bunch of Beetcoin dialogues. I would still classify this as a bit of an experiment. You know, we know people are zoomed out, so we're really respectful of your time and energy, and very grateful for the number of people who've come onto these and have stayed on for the full program. We've still got 65 people on right now. We're over an hour, so that's great. So thank you all for that. Do not stand on ceremony. I'll call on you in a second, Joni. Don't stand on ceremony. Contact Tana at slowmoney.org if you have questions about Soil Boulder. Contact me, Woody, at slowmoney.org if you have any questions of any kind about the soil model or the Beetcoin, how it's working, and or even what you can do to help. So thank you all so much. This concludes the official part of the program, and we're going to stay on and gab